spontaneous combustion.
Yeah, that looks like crooked, but I don't think it is.
Does it feel crooked?
What?
What you talking about?
Have a...
So we're kind of like imagining that there's people that we're talking to on the other side of cameras. What's up, everybody? I'm here with my really good friend Johnny, and we are here to share with you King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, which I just read for the second time, and he just read. And do you want to share a little bit about yourself before we go into this?
Yeah, I'm Johnny Gomez. I have a private practice called Medellin Health, do intuitive work, energy work, also transpersonal development, and yeah, just looking for ways to be the medicine for myself and for the people.
Right on. Cool. So let's dive into it.
So the King of Warrior, the Magician, Lover, I mean, it's really essence about, growing from boy psychology into man psychology. In modern day society, they're really one of the things that we no longer have, or we're not witnessing, is this ability for us to have that initiation from boyhood to manhood. We've got a lot of boys, a lot of young men who they're stepping into that role of what they believe to be manhood, but that manhood maybe has holes in it, that idea, that belief system. And they're left feeling these feelings, these emotions, or maybe even seeing patterns of how they interact in the world that they don't really relate to, but they don't really know how to improve either, or how to shift in their selves. So part of that is because of this lost rite of passage that really we don't have, because we're not in that tribal society mindset. We're more of in this, you gotta do, and then here is the blueprint of how you live the dream. But once you live the dream, then how do you get back into actually evolving yourself as a man, or as a person? I'll just say person, because really it's connected to male or female. It's not just about boys. It's really about going from child.
Everybody embodies both the masculine and the feminine to
Right, exactly.
a balanced degree. I think reading this book can be a liberation from that mind prison of I need to be this certain way because I'm a man.
Yeah. Right. It's as a boy, a lot of what our struggle is stepping into that space of being able to, we're ruled by the ego as boys. I mean, that's just plain and simple. So being ruled by the ego, that's the way we move about in life. And when we talk about the ego, if we look at it, it's a way to protect ourselves. It's something, it's a program in the mind that says, hey, look, this person, this being needs to survive, and let's take in anything that we can that matches up with the best way for survival for that being. And as a boy, you allow that program to run in you based on your connections. When you first come out, it's usually your parents are the first ones that you're looking for belief systems, for those methods of survival, really. And however they look in different ways, shapes, or forms. How do I verbally communicate? How do I interact with the world? How am I supposed to show up in the world and be? And so then that program's running of the ego saying, okay, this is based on all this information that we learned. Now, this is how it's supposed to run, and let's check that as the baseline. Check everything that you do and everything that you interact with that baseline. And if it doesn't match up, red alert, red alert, red alert, hey, it's not connected with this baseline, therefore this is incorrect, or therefore fight or flight. Let's either challenge that or let's run away from it. And that's just basic human response, human experience.
I think also, what you're saying, I think there's the aspect of the survival, but I think another aspect of that same thing is how we receive love when we're children. Because we fall into programming that's, I need to act this way in order to receive love from my family, essentially, and from my friends and whatever else. And it's cool to look at the archetypes and see how we create balance in them and how we are aware of those, and how that creates a healthy relationship for ourselves on our life paths and with people that we're in relationship with other people too.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Well said. And so now that you have that idea of the boy psychology, that rite of initiation, that's where that comes in. That tribal rite, mentioned in the beginning of the book of, where you had these physical rituals that took place in caves, or if this moment of actually having the boy go through some type of scenario, real-time scenario, where their life is at stake. And if their life is at stake, how would you then react and respond to that? And then completing that, however that looks for them, then is the right, that feeling of accomplishment, that milestone that then moves them past boyhood. The boy dies and is humbled and then becomes the man and starts off this new journey, this new leg of their life as the man. And when that shift takes place, that's where, as the man, you begin this new mission, which is, how do I build a relationship or an alliance with the ego? Not the ego is ruling me, not I'm fighting the ego is the enemy. It's, okay, the ego's there, I recognize that you're there and that you were meant to protect me, you're here for a reason. But now how do we start to work together so that we are in alignment with love, with how we receive love, how we give love, and connect with love in the world. And then it's no longer, survival isn't the biggest reason for existing. It's really loving in all forms is the reason for existing.
That was the biggest epiphany I had the second time I read the book, and I'm definitely going to share about that. I wanted to go back to what you were talking about with the rituals, because I remember one ritual that an old tribe used to do, and I think this was carried on for quite a while, but when a boy got to a certain age, they would have him go through this sort of maze, through this sort of, I kind of imagine it as sort of like an obstacle course or something, but kind of a difficult, painful thing to go through. And there's a point where he, at the end, kind of walks through ashes. And then at the end, when he comes out and greets everybody, their mother and father would be there, but they would be so into this performance that they would act like they had never seen them before. They were accepting them into the world for the first time. And it's really that experience of being reborn. And this book was talking about how, a lot of times in today we have what they call pseudo-initiations, right? Which are initiation into gangs and stuff like that, where he talks about
The military also.
Yeah, exactly. And it's basically saying whenever you go through something like that, where it's really initiation through violence or through basically a shadow of these archetypes, you are stuck in this state where the immature masculine archetypes are really still there. You have not transcended into the mature archetypes. That foundation is still there and it's fractured. It's kind of living through the bipolarities of the archetypes.
Right, and then that is what in essence becomes your view of what it means to be a man, or embody that manhood aspect of it. And that's really where the brokenness takes place, is because then you see, say, military, and this isn't the way to knock military at all, because definitely, there's a service that's being done. Majority of people that go there, they really do have a strong essence of service, of really, being that honorable, embodying that aspect, and protecting that which they love, those loved ones, the cause, the idea that they're fighting for. So there is that to be respected and honored. The piece where it goes I guess a little bit south is where it's you're coming back and you're beating your wife or you're bullying people. You're now in this essence that I need to prove something else to somebody, and the way that I do that is by show of force, or that I feel comfortable and safe by using my force. And that, when it talks about those shadow aspects of the warrior and the hero. Actually, it's, I believe, the warrior, that's the king is the tyrant. The warrior has the sadist and the masochist.
Sadist and the masochist.
Yeah, and so with that sadist looking to just inflict pain.
One thing that I realized after learning about this is a lot of times you see this show up in relationships with men and friendships, where one guy is the masochist and one guy is the sadist. And I've had relationships with some of my friends years ago where there was this imbalance, where it was one guy was one polarity, and I would let my friends talk down to me and kind of, but it was also my relationship with myself. I was overcritical of myself, I was judging myself, I was all this stuff, and then I would manifest friends that were on the other end. They were the sadists, the ones that would tell me that,
Mm-hmm.
And it's just interesting how much you see that. And I guess that was one thing that was really an eye-opener for me, was reading all about all the all the shadows of the archetypes in here.
Mm-hmm.
Is what you were saying about some men are abusive and manipulative and all these things, because this book really goes into talking about how that happens and where the imbalance is. I think that this can create like a really compassionate understanding, reading about these things within ourselves and with other people too. And I found that to be a gem in reading the book.
Yeah.
I just would like to ask you, like, as a friend, like if we weren't shooting a video or whatever, I think we're being genuine either way.
Mm-hmm.
But what did you think about the book, and what things really stood out to you the most, and just what are your honest feelings about it, and that sort of thing.
For me, the book, well, I'll start off, with the way that I've been moving in my life path is really as the seeker, looking for ways that I can really dial in exactly where my authenticity is, what's really alive in my heart and my being, and then what aligns with that unconditionally, living with the baseline of unconditional love, and what that means to me and how that maybe even evolves in me, just continually allowing myself to flow with that. So with that as a baseline, really not having any idea of what the structure looks like, using the king, the warrior, magician, lover, this has helped me to wrangle in where I may be falling out of line with that, with unconditional love for myself and for others in my life path. Being able to have a guidebook, something that just says, hey, these are the milestones, these are the elements of who you are, who you can be, and where do you fit within those in this moment presently. So if I am embodying a shadow aspect of the lover in whichever way that looks, understanding that is where I'm at and acknowledging it, and not judging myself for where I'm at there, more having a clear path as to how I can shift back in alignment with the higher aspect of that, the lighter side of that archetype. And really just dancing in life with this as that guidebook, as that kind of that legend.
Wow. Yeah, I definitely resonate with that a lot. It's like through the movement on the life path, on the journey, or whatever you want to call it. It's like a way to keep balance.
Right. Yeah, it's a balance because it's not a one and done. You're not going to say, oh yeah, I know what the king, what it looks like to embody all of the highest aspects of the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. We're always, life is going to do what it does, and we can be in that highest aspect of ourselves and shift down into that shadow side of ourselves, whether it's, you know, being the worst towards others or being the worst towards ourselves. That's really not going to help us any better by beating ourselves up over the fact that we shifted and that we're not that highest person at all times. It's okay, well then let me hold myself for a little bit because I'm feeling very vulnerable, and vulnerable in a way that it is now showing up as maybe these shadow aspects of myself. And if I can hold myself in that way with love and compassion towards whatever triggered that shift, then it's easier for me to find that way to shift back into that state of full consciousness of being and presence and love and compassion towards others and respect and honor, all of those things that I'm looking for myself, being able to then push that out into the world and communicating where it is that I am and feeling like I am safe to communicate that. So I guess I'll put the same out to you, is what is it that you feel that you know, really resonated with you, or that maybe shifted in you after reading the book? You know, how has it impacted you, and what does it mean for you?
Yeah, well, I really resonate with what you said, you know. I mean, I think it was reminding me of how, and I think it pretty much says this, because the way the book is structured is that you learn about the archetype generally, usually, and then you learn about the shadows, and then you learn about the fullness of the archetype, and then at the end usually it'll say how to access the archetype in its fullness. And one thing that I remember reading is that it's never about, I have achieved perfect balance, I'm here. It's always like, there's always a virtue of being on guard, of watching. Because what it says is that there's always the imbalance, the bipolarities, the shadows are always there to some extent. It's just, where are they? And I found that to be really humbling, and also just like what you were saying with like kind of keeping balance on the moving of life, you know, like always keeping an eye on that. I definitely found that to be really, really beneficial. The first time I read this book, I think the biggest thing was just reading about all the shadows and realizing those things within myself that I knew were there, but maybe hadn't heard anybody talk about, or hadn't read about it and have really a way to put it into words. Especially the second time through, paying more attention to accessing the archetypes in their fullness and what that looks like. I think it's just a really, really incredible way to have a solid ground in your masculine self. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've gotten out of it. I think it's absolutely crucial for it. I feel that for myself, it's a crucial aspect of how I keep my masculinity in check and in balance. So,
yeah, like how you mentioned where it's, you know, finding where you're at in that balance. The word that came up to me is almost like is stalking yourself in that moment. You know, you think about the hunter, how he stalks his prey, and you're either stalking your prey or you're being stalked. You know, you're the prey or the predator. And looking at it in a way where it's, you know, am I the predator to my emotions or my shadow, or am I the predator constantly monitoring, stalking, watching, maybe even just staying back and holding space for a little bit, because it's not all about action when you're a hunter, when you're on the hunt. It's also about some of that just real steadiness and attentiveness. So being that for yourself, and when you're in that state of mind, then it's a lot easier for you to say, okay, yeah, I'm really not showing up as my best self right now. And why is that?